Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So firstly, I just want to say a massive thank you to anybody who commented on my last video. When I put up that video, I wasn't 100% and I was really nervous about putting it up, but I didn't have any reason to be because you guys were all so nice. I kind of knew that you'd all be nice about it because you're all such kind people and you've given me no reason to think otherwise. But I wasn't expecting the amount of love and support I got on that video. It was genuinely just so heartwarming and reassuring, and it's made me feel so much better about quite a lot of things. So just know that I'm really grateful and I appreciate you all. So today I'm going to be doing another recent reads video for you guys, and when I was planning for this video I kind of realised that I have a lot of books to talk about, and that's because of a number of reasons. Firstly, this video is going up kind of late, so the amount of books I've been reading has just been piling up. Secondly, Booktubeathon happened recently. Thirdly, I've been doing quite a lot of rereads of children's books. And fourthly, Man Booker season started, so that was a massive incentive to read for me. So I think what I'm going to do today is just talk to you guys about the books that I've read recently that aren't Man Booker books, and then as my next video I'll do a kind of Man Booker video giving you mini reviews of all of the Man Booker books I've read so far and just chatting to you guys about which are my favourites so far and things like that. So the first books that I read recently were Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone and Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. So these were of course rereads, and I actually listened to them on audiobook because I was doing some work over the summer that allowed me to listen to audiobooks while I worked, and I'm basically always in the mood to listen to these audiobooks. They're like one of my favourite things and they were the perfect thing to listen to make the time go a bit quicker and just make work more bearable. So there isn't really much to say about these two. I absolutely love them both. They're both 5 out of 5 star reads for me, and they were just a joy to listen to. The next book that I read recently was The Lost Girls of Camp Forevermore by Kim Fu. So this is a book that I was really excited to read. It was one of my most anticipated reads of the year, and ultimately I was kind of disappointed by this. And that isn't to say that this wasn't an enjoyable read. It was an enjoyable read, but it just didn't do anything amazingly like I hoped it would. So this novel follows a group of young girls who go to camp one summer in the Pacific Northwest, where they do all kinds of traditional camp-like things, like swimming and building campfires and making friendship bracelets. And then one evening, the girls go on a kayaking trip to a nearby island, but when they get there, they become abandoned and there's absolutely no adults around. So I went into this novel actually thinking it was a children's book. I thought it was just going to focus in on the girls while they were at camp, but it's really not that at all. It's definitely an adult novel. The novel jumps around in time and perspective quite a lot. So some of the chapters are from the point of view of the girls when they're younger, during this time at camp, and then other chapters are focusing in on the women when they're much older in their lives, and we get to see how they've turned out. So this was a good story because of two things. So firstly, it was good because I was really intrigued to see what would happen to these girls when they're abandoned on the island. And secondly, I love characters, so it was really interesting for me to get to know the girls when they were younger and then ultimately see how they ended up living their different lives. Because of this, I was wanting to see lots of really interesting parallels between the characters when they were younger and the characters when they were older. But I didn't really feel like I got this that much. I didn't feel much continuity between the characters at different ages. And when there was a kind of parallel that I saw, it wasn't very interesting. I just wanted more insight into these characters. I really wanted to see how these events when they were younger shaped them as individuals with individual personalities when they were older. All in all, I really liked the idea of this novel and I loved the setting, and there were definitely scenes that I really enjoyed. But I just don't think it was executed that well. I really wanted to see more continuity within the characters, and I just didn't find them to be very convincing, so that kind of ruined this for me. So overall, it was good, it was enjoyable, but it wasn't my favourite thing ever, and ultimately I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I read recently was another children's reread for me, and that was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl. I am trying to reread all of Roald Dahl's children's books this year, and this was my first read of the Booktubeathon. This is one of my absolute favourite Roald Dahl books. I don't know why, I think it was one of the ones that I read first when I was younger, and I just love it so much. I love all of the characters. I find them so hilarious and fascinating, and I think the story is just brilliant. We all know the story. I don't need to tell you. It never gets old, and it was fantastic. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read recently was another booktubeathon read, but this one was a poetry collection, and that is Seamus Heaney's Human Chain. So this poetry collection is basically about what it says in the title. So it's about all the different human relationships that we can hold with one another and how they're all really complex and weave in and out of each other. Interconnectedness is definitely a major theme in this collection. And there are also themes of the past and the present and what is handed down through time. I thoroughly enjoyed this collection. It's basically the perfect recipe for a poetry collection for me. I absolutely love any kind of text that explores themes of family and the different relationships that we can have with one another, and I think it worked particularly well in this format. I also really enjoyed Seamus Heaney's style of poetry in this collection. All of the poems were very simple and easy to digest, but there was a mix of longer poems and shorter poems, and they all just had a really nice flow. And there were definitely a few really beautiful moments of lovely word choice and imagery throughout. As with basically all poetry collections, there were definitely some poems in here that I loved a lot more than others. There were definitely a couple that I didn't really connect with that much. But overall, I thought it was a really great, solid collection. Seamus Heaney is clearly a really gifted poet who definitely knows what he's doing, so I'm really excited to read more by him in the future. And overall, I gave this one a 4 stars. The next book I read was my final booktubeathon read, and it was definitely my favourite, and that is The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. I absolutely love this book. I fell in love with it while I was reading it, and it definitely became an instant children's favourite of mine. So this is a book that I have read before. I believe I read it when I was quite a young child, but I couldn't really remember it, and I thought it was about time that I reread it. And I did reread the beautiful illustrated copy that I've had since I was really young. It's actually at home right now, so I can't show you it, but it's in my booktubeathon vlog if you are interested in that. And reading that copy just made the whole thing so much better. It was just perfect. So this novel tells the story of Mary Lennox, who is a young girl when she moves back to England from India after her parents are killed, and she goes and lives in a massive house called Misselthwaite Manor that is owned by her uncle, which is in the gloomy Yorkshire Dales, which Mary is certainly not used to. And the story is just about Mary as she starts off as a very selfish and spiteful and stubborn young girl when she finds the secret garden in the lands of the manor, and she kind of finds family and friends along the way. Everything about this book is brilliant. All of the characters are so interesting and complex and kind of lovable in a way, and the way that childhood experiences and emotions are depicted through Mary is so spot on. The plot is absolutely genius. It is so beautiful and intriguing, and I was hooked all the way through. And the writing is also just so lovely. It's accessible for children and adults, but it doesn't lack any kind of grace or elegance, and I just thoroughly enjoyed it all. Every single word in this book was just a pure delight to read. I kept thinking, it can't keep this up, it can't keep this up, but it did. It's definitely one of my favourite books of the year so far, without a doubt, and I do think that it'll be one I'll reread many times in my lifetime. So I absolutely loved this. Of course, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read recently was a very well-loved historical novel, and that is Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. So I'm sure a lot of you already know what this novel is about, but if you don't, it is the first in a promised trilogy of novels that tells the story of Thomas Cromwell from the year 1500, when he was just the son of a poor blacksmith, up until the point when he was probably the most influential man in the whole of England, when he was the most powerful of King Henry VIII's courtiers. So I actually saw Hilary Mantel talk about this novel and its sequels quite recently at the Man Booker 50 Festival in London. And while she was talking, she went into quite some detail about the many years of research that went into this book and the books that come after it. She explained that she wanted to give as an accurate account as she could of Thomas Cromwell's life, because she feels like he is a very interesting man and one that's been misrepresented in the past. The incredible amount of research that has gone into this novel is definitely apparent when you're reading it. You can just tell how much time and thought and care has gone into it. I almost felt like I could be reading fact when I was reading this. At the very least, I definitely felt like I learnt a lot about the Tudor time through reading the novel. And while this novel is very factually interesting, it also, of course, has all of the drama and intrigue that this time in history had. The Tudor time was so brutal and opulent and just fascinating. It's kind of as if somebody's just made it all up for our entertainment, but it actually happened. I was definitely drawn into the plot in this novel all the way through. Mantell's writing in this novel is also superb. It's so rich and detailed and delicious and just consistently very impressive. There were definitely brilliant moments that I had to go over and reread over and over again. So I thoroughly enjoyed this novel. It did take me a while to read, but I think that's more on kind of how I wanted to read it than anything to do with the content. I kind of liked reading it over a longer period of time and kind of staying in the world. And I will say that I don't think this novel quite had the effect on me that it has on a lot of people. A lot of people are absolutely mad for it, like head over heels in love with it. I didn't love it quite that much, but I did think it was fantastic and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'll definitely be reading the rest of the trilogy. So overall, I gave Wolf Hall a 4 out of 5 stars. The penultimate book that I'm going to be talking about in this video is another poetry collection, and that is Rapture by Carol Ann Duffy. So I've read some other of Carol Ann Duffy's collections in the past and absolutely loved them, and I've read a lot of her singular poems and loved them as well. So I was definitely keen to pick up more of her collections and read more of her work. And then I saw these beautiful editions by Picador and I thought, I would just have to start collecting them. So this collection is known as Carol Ann Duffy's Love Collection, and that isn't to say that it's full of happy love poems. It's more about love in all of its forms and all of the different emotions that come along with love and the many often painful situations that come along with it as well. Carol Ann Duffy just clearly has a gift, doesn't she? So often I would read the poems in this collection and just be blown away by how perfect they were, both in the content and in how truthfully and perceptively she's saying what she's saying about love, but also by her beautiful language choices and how all of her words just fit together so perfectly and mean just the right thing, but also how they come together as a beautiful whole and just sound so right when you read them out loud for what the poem is trying to say. I absolutely love this poetry collection. There were, of course, the odd poems that I didn't care for so much, and I will say that I found a couple of the poems to be a tiny bit repetitive, but overall, I just thought it was absolutely brilliant. This collection really resonated with me the way poetry should, both whilst I was reading it and afterwards as well. So I absolutely loved this and I would highly recommend it. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Fun fact, this collection actually has one of my favourite ever poems in it that I've loved for years, and that is Hour. And finally, the most recent book I've read is The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. So I actually read this as part of a buddy read with my friend Kelly over at Books I'm Not Reading. I'll leave her video linked down below in which she talks about this, so you can go over and get her thoughts after you've watched this. So Kelly and I had never read this book before, and we were just kind of wondering what all the hype was about and whether we'd been missing out having not read it. So we decided to do it together. So this is a modern classic that I'm sure many of you have read before, but it is about a teenage boy called Holden Caulfield in the 1950s, and throughout the novel Holden tells us about his most recent few months, so when he was at boarding school and then his boarding school broke up for Christmas, and then towards the end of the novel we find out the situation that Holden is in at the moment. So I will start off by saying that I did not love this book, unfortunately, and I don't think Kelly did either from what I've heard. I was actually really surprised when she sent me a message kind of giving me her overall feelings of the book. Just because of how similar our reading experiences of the book seem to be, we have very similar feelings. So here were the things that I really liked about the book. So I love a boarding school setting, so obviously I was feeling really happy at the beginning of the book and really hopeful. But then of course this changes and the book kind of lost my interest partway through. Another thing I really enjoyed about the book was hearing about Holden's relationship with his younger sister Phoebe. So their relationship was by far my favourite aspect of this book. I found their relationship to be touching and very persuasive, and Phoebe was definitely my favourite character. So now on to the things that I didn't like so much. So I get that this novel is meant to be character focused. It's meant to be the story of a teenage boy who isn't very well and he's trying to navigate his way around lots of different things in his life, and it's meant to be a kind of coming of age self-identity thing. So up to a certain point, it doesn't really matter what happens in this book because the things that happen aren't the focus of the book. The focus is Holden. And I'm all for that. We all know that I love characters. Characters are my favourite aspect of novels. And so on paper, this sounds great for me. But the problem was I just found Holden irritating and kind of ridiculous. This story is told through Holden's very distinct voice, which once again sounds brilliant for me. I love a really distinct voice in a novel, and I love it when a character's dialect comes through in the narration. But Holden's voice just came across so forced and unrealistic to me whilst I was reading. He has these phrases that he says over and over again, such as "goddamn" and "it really did." And it just kind of felt like Salinger had gone, okay, these are going to be the things that Holden says a lot, and I'm going to put them in the novel over and over again because it will make him really consistent as a character and his voice will really sound like him. That just made Holden as a character not only unbelievable to me, but very, very grating. I also just didn't really get the best vibe from this book overall. Is it a stretch too far to say that I thought both Holden and Salinger came across as a little pretentious? It kind of felt like they thought they were doing something really, really great. And I kind of didn't think they were. The writing was mediocre. The characters were very frustrating. There was just a lot of good ideas here, but I don't think the execution was very good at all. So to wrap it up, there were definitely some things about this novel that I really enjoyed, and on paper I like the sound of this novel a lot, so I can kind of see why some people may really like this. But it just wasn't for me. I just didn't really enjoy it that much. So overall, I gave The Catcher in the Rye 2.5 stars. So those were all the books that I've read recently. As always, I'd absolutely love to know if you've read any of them and what you thought of them. Let's chat down below. And once again, I just want to say thank you to everyone who commented on my last video and just all the people who always support me. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate your patience. You probably noticed that this video is going up late again this week, but everyone's told me that it's fine and to not worry about it, so I'm trying to go easy on myself, and hopefully at some point we should settle back down into a good routine. So I think that's going to be it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to go and check out Kelly's video next about The Catcher in the Rye, and I will see you all soon with my next video. Bye everyone.